Welcome to the Digital Amateur Television Experimenters Night. This is VK7 OTC, the club station of the Radio and Electronics Association of Southern Tasmania. Amateur radio is a worldwide hobby that has many different aspects. Digital television is just one of the many modes and areas that are covered. Maybe you're interested in becoming involved in the DATV Experimenters Nights. You realise that you do not have to be a radio amateur or need any ATV equipment to participate anywhere in the world. Also participate in the night by coming up to the Queen's Domain club rooms. Yes, right on top of the Queen's Domain in the heritage-listed Coast Wireless Station. You never know, we might get you in front of the camera or behind doing one of the many roles during the night. We get underway with our program on a Wednesday night from 7:30pm local time. We'll see you soon. This is VK7 OTC.
Well, that's no good. You've got to turn it around a little bit so that this guy adds up on the roof. What I did is I worked out what the angle was, the trigonometry. So then when I built the bracket, I actually measured the tower legs were 220mm outside. When you turn that angle, obviously, so I calculated what that was and made the two bits of angle suck out at that right dimension.
All right,
so of course the boys bolted it to the wall and they said, "Oh, the tower won't fit into it."
We might get underway.
Wake up.
Wake up, yeah, we started a bit late, so, and thank you, Rod, for letting us know the issue on the bridge. May limit our numbers a little bit tonight. What tonight is all about actually started as a bit of an embryonic idea last week. Steve OO is currently in the envious position of starting a brand spanking new shack. And so he was asking some ideas and giving us some ideas and all sorts of stuff, and I sort of thought, well, actually this, what would be good is a forum where everybody gets a chance to actually put in their amazing innovative ideas for their shack, for reuse, for recycling, for whatever. So inside or outside the shack, but just basically a platform to give people a space to put in ideas. If you've got some problems that you need solving, please put it into the mix, because I have no doubt there's probably some ideas around the table. So yeah, that was the idea of tonight. So I'm going to ask, who wants to go first?
Are these innovative ideas for anybody's shack or his shack?
No, anybody's shack. Anybody's shack. And we are streaming this, so I'll check the chat channel in a short while, because there might be some ideas coming through on there.
Yeah.
So yeah.
One of the things that I've often wondered about is the advisability of having some sort of antenna cable barrier system. You often see advertised window plates that go into the window frame, and you have connections both sides and a hardwired connection between.
Yep.
But is it more desirable to have the ability to patch, or is it more desirable to have low loss and therefore no
Depends on frequencies, I would suspect.
Well,
and what do you do what you do come a thunderstorm,
But waveguide
you go around and unpatch each individual piece of radio gear from its antennas, or do you have some sort of system of making a break midstream?
There was a very innovative system I saw, which is on YouTube, where someone has come up, an amateur has come up with a whole lot of connectors, and it's obviously HF. I don't think it's microwave, but it's a whole lot of connectors. There are 5 bits of RG2, what looked like RG213, with connectors on and a little linear actuator that on a track that pushes these together. And so he pushes a button, and basically 5 coaxes come apart and put 300 mil in between each end. Now,
This is for lightning protection.
This is for lightning protection, I assume, but you
Gee,
still.
I reckon to make an actuator and have 5 coax connectors join up exactly right would be an interesting problem.
And you'd only be able to do it.
And you wouldn't be able to screw the thing on.
You can get connectors that are designed specifically as push
They
fit.
haven't got the screw.
They haven't got the screws.
Problem
and-
solved, Justin.
and
I've
the
moved.
mouth of the connector is
Sorry?
slightly.
Problem solved, I've moved.
And it has a
No,
no.
fire at the end, right?
Because
Yeah.
there's different people giving different solutions here, but that was one thing I actually saw. But what's the feeling around the table about the loss from patch cables and all of that sort of stuff in a shack
I
situation?
think it'd be good at HF and VHF maybe, and even sort of UHF if you didn't have too many joints.
Yep.
Rex, do you think it's a problem below 432 and below? Do you think it's much of a problem having let's say a single break? In other words, a barrel connector where you what you've got.
I don't think it is.
If you just have one, it's the problem is they just tend to get a bit out of control. You have one here, then you have a patch cable there, and a patch cable on the back of your radio, and then one between your preamp.
Got a picture to show you later about that.
So if you start to introduce some antenna switching in the shack, then you've got a few connections anyway.
That's right.
But it's convenient to say, all right, I'm running the HF on that rig today, but tomorrow I'll probably use that one, and then the Friday night we'll go to the bottle shop, and
Well, some people have like a horizontal beam that they use on say 2 metres, and then they might flick it to a vertical or whatever. So
So it can get quite complicated.
Yeah, Dave at 7DM, he's got a patch panel, but he uses BNCs
okay,
and some sort of hard
U-shaped.
U-shaped stuff, so he can patch.
At least they're relatively quick.
Old Muser stuff, is it? Muser stuff?
No, I lost
A push-pull
No.
ring?
No, it's just like a
You actually got to use a clip, okay.
Yeah.
Like a bayonet
Yeah.
connection, yeah.
Yeah, BNC type.
Yeah, it would be a pain with like the
How many people get hit by lightning or their equipment hit by lightning in Tassie every year? Anybody know?
I've only heard of one.
Fairly low.
It's enough to be a nuisance.
If you're the one that gets hit.
Yeah. I've had some storms very close to me, and I've wondered.
I think it's well, I don't know, it's lucky. I know I don't disconnect my antennas at all, because sometimes you think about it and you go, oh geez, that thunder sounds pretty close, I should go upstairs. Oh, not a good idea. And yet I've heard of other people, like we've had strikes at home that you sort of see the flash and hear the bang and think, wow, and yet nothing's broken.
We've had a hit up here somewhere,
Yep.
which has taken out the alarm panel because we had to replace the alarm.
But it
panel.
hasn't broken.
Hasn't
So
broken.
often,
anything,
see, I had the same issue. I had a strike near home, and it came up the power line and actually cooked a couple of bits of equipment that were fine until they were switched on.
Okay.
Turn the computer on and go, oh, what's that funny smell? So
And I have to say, in the southern Tasmania, having experienced northwest Tasmania and the thunder and lightning storms they get up there, which are dynamite, down here you don't get them as ferocious. And I assume that's because of the weather patterns. Like we would get probably 2 or 3 a year.
Yeah, I think-
Really ferocious thunderstorms.
Yeah, I can remember one or two that were really
We've
bad.
generally
ones.
got hills around that are more favourable for being hit, aren't we?
Correct.
I think there's only about 6 or 8 what they call thunder days a year in Hobart,
Okay.
and that's when you hear a roll of thunder, and that's it. It's a thunder day
Yeah,
as far
okay.
as Metro.
So if your
Have you
piece of,
lost any preamps, Rex?
Not because of lightning. I sent an RF up the back of them.
Four sequencing.
None of his
So if
stuff is
you're-
going to
you're-
be high.
But
None of your stuff will be high up on a mast.
if your piece of antenna infrastructure is the highest thing around, there's every chance you're going to get hit sometime.
but I'm not the highest thing. It's top of Tomlin's Hill where there's a
Big tower.
telephone tower.
I've got a very high gum tree on my block too, which is significantly higher than anything else.
Does the WIA provide equipment insurance?
No. No, that's on your household insurance. But interesting idea.
ARL does.
Which quite often isn't covered by lightning.
By
As it can
acts
see.
of God.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll just say there is Phil Thompson, VK7ZSS, who from Navaris and the other companies are giving us a talk at the WIA annual conference weekend. So on lightning protection. So we had a request for him to come along and give a talk on lightning protection. So he's actually doing it for us. So that's
That was a good visit.
down there.
Too, yeah.
Probably worth doing that again, because that was probably 5 or 6 years ago, right?
I reckon. Yeah.
Well and truly.
I mean, it's interesting that they have located themselves in Hobart, which is about the least lightning protection place you can get.
Correct.
Yeah, try going to Darwin.
Does anybody know the effect of grounding the antenna? I would assume it doesn't do much, but
Well, I don't know, but my intuition on that says that you're making it more of a target. But anyway, because you're grounding something that's now in the air. But I might be wrong there.
The lightning will take the least path with least resistance.
It'll take the path
So
it
in
wants.
case of whether you want it to go down the earth line and hit the earth stake, or do you want it to go through the bit of gear first?
Correct.
I think
Probably
that-
won't make turns.
But to make a suitable path to go to ground, it's going to have to be a sizable cable.
Thinking so, it's
No more electrical earth. It's got to be 10 mil squared.
ever going to be practical to have an earthing system that would withstand a direct strike anyway. Cause like we've seen some communication towers on mountains that have got 100 square millimetre earths, and you just sort of see frayed ends of copper. It's like,
Well, and the talk that Phil gave us on that night after he'd done the tour, he had the calculations that you use when you're designing this stuff, and it's
thousands of amps.
well, it's thousands of amps. It's in an instant.
Yeah.
If you put the voltage aside, but it's just scary amounts of energy.
It's going to happen. There's nothing you can do again about it.
Correct.
I think all these stuff like on our comm sites where you have that they want the antenna earthed, and then they want it earthed at the bottom of the tower, then they want it earthed before it goes into the humpies to just sort of just try and keep a bit of static build up, I think, out of equipment. If there's a nearby strike, you might get a bit of induced voltages that you can just sort of scurry away to ground, but if it's
Main
a direct
strike.
hit,
No,
lights are off, forget it.
So therefore that leads you to wonder how effective the lightning's arrestor system is on, say, the ABC's AM transmission tower, because they actually light the tower itself up and it's insulated from ground. But they've got some sort of lightning arrestor to stop the damage to
So
the
it's like
transmitter.
from ground would be a big target, if it's not saying not an earth
But
potential, would it?
It'll have a big spark gap.
yeah, a big one.
Don't they have tuned feeders on some of those?
I'm not sure what the feed-in arrangement is these days.
What Jennifer could probably tell you, because he worked down there.
It'd be the same as an NDB. It'll have an antenna tuning unit right next to it, and there will be a big spark gap.
Remember Joe Gulston used to say that pulling your coax off every time you think there's lightning is going to cause more problem with full coax connectors.
Well, it's a 4-hour drive, return drive for me to go and disconnect mine. I've got 4 lightning arresters, 2 for VHF and UHF, and the other 2 for HF. So they come into a connection panel and go through them, and that panel is just direct to Earth, but it's more for a nearby strike. From what I've been told, a direct strike, you can just, doesn't matter what you do.
You kiss the equipment goodbye.
They reckon there's more damage through induced voltages in cables, be they telephone cables or any other form of external connection to your, and even a cable in the ground can get induced voltages which can damage. There's generally more damage from that sort of strike rather than a direct strike.
I think I remember correctly, I once visited Rex Johnson out in Newtown about 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and he had a system of coaxes coming in through the wall, and he would disconnect from his equipment at the end of each session, but he would then connect that same connector to a ground system, so that if he did happen to get a strike, the preferred route would be to ground. It might fry the cable, but by taking that current that way, he's hoped to have knocked off any capacitive coupling into any gear.
Yes,
I'm way too lazy for that stuff.
a number of people do that. There is an alternative thought. It's better to just disconnect your cable and throw it out the window. Just doesn't matter whether it's lying. Put a waterproof boot on it if you like, but just get it out of the building. Then there's less chance of damage than connecting it to ground. I don't know.
I know I've had a rig that's had an IC replaced that seemed to have been hit somewhere along the line with a capacitive hit.
Yeah.
Nothing physical on any cable or any sign of any damage, and yet something had upset this particular IC.
I think a lot of it, if you get a nearby strike, as Justin said, in the cable, almost Winston said, in the cabling, then maybe that sudden surge can maybe break down some dielectric junction somewhere. That's all fine until you turn the power on, and then sort of bad things happen. So silent.
Who's got an external TV antenna? Is it grounded?
No.
Well,
Yes,
so it opens
you're
up
right.
all the stories. Is your roof roofed?
Exactly.
Is your roof earthed? And all sorts of questions.
So
that
we
just
don't have an
assume.
innovative solution for this.
I'm sensing that. We might go on to something else. I've brought along a few innovative ideas.
Just got some pictures sent to me of some innovative ideas.
Oh, there you go. I love it. Is this cable management innovative ideas?
Yeah, sort of.
Wife.
Yeah, from wife.
From wife.
Babe, can you go upstairs and take some photos for me?
Excellent. So take us through what your innovative cable management ideas are.
Basically, my shack is in the middle of the house. Probably until I met Rex and did lots of microwave things, I thought feed line lengths were really important. So my shack is in the middle of the house. It's elevated, sort of 3 stories, and to get out to where the antennas are, you've got to go through the ceiling of the rumpus room. So I thought, it's going to be messy having cables come in. So I thought, why don't I do like what we do at work and just run some cable tray around the underside of the bench, of the operating benches. and just bring all the feed lines in, like the heliacs in, and basically terminate them sort of just as they come in, and then have like tails that run from there to the radio. So I've got like 12 bits of LDF 450 and LMR 400 that come in and just terminate, and they go out to a fairly unceremonious toolbox that's at the end of the cable tray.
We're drooling, Richard.
Yeah. And you just basically have all those tails there, and they're all numbered, so when you hook up a new antenna, the tail number 8, you just then go inside and label it. But I've also added to that and brought Cat 6 cables from a space down below, which we often call the server room, but it's just a junk space. And I brought like 15 Cat 5 cables up from there, and that runs around underneath, and there's 16, there's four gang outlets underneath the bench. So when you want to plug something in, you just dangle a cable over the back and plug it in. So it works pretty well. It's even got some power boards attached to it as well.
He's even got power boards attached to the cable trays.
Yeah.
That's very impressive, Richard. That's incredibly impressive.
Just keeps the floor fun.
Well, I'll just, as a contrast to that idea.
Now to the rest of us.
I'll just hand around a picture
I
because
should add that when I built the house, this space was designated the radio shack before a spade went in the ground. So a bit like Steve, I was lucky that, how do you want to do this? Let's do it like this.
Yeah, and can I just say, when we renovated downstairs, I had the radio shack and Helen had her music room. And they were the two rooms that were predefined before we did the renovation, before we even had it on plans. But anyway, in the shack, what I'll hand around is a picture. And the picture just shows, I've got a couple of little doors that open up into both the side wall, so the inside of a side wall, and also into the ceiling space between upstairs and downstairs, because I laid some PVC piping in various directions so I could just push coax down the pipe. And once it came in through these little doors and holes in the wall, I then had to get it to where we needed to get it to, and I thought, I know how we do this. I get a piece of PVC pipe, I get a hole saw, I cut some holes in it at various points, and
it's a good idea.
Put the coax comes out, goes into the PVC pipe, and it just drops where I need it in the shack. Now that's great for the coax. If I was to take up another picture sort of a bit lower down, I need to do cable management on the power cords, which I'm not cable manager at the moment. And Ron's got actually a good idea that he'll go into in a sec around that, which I will certainly think about. But the innovative idea is, it's a piece of PVC pipe, literally. Those holes are cut at 600mm distances, because your studs are at 600mm and you need to screw them into something on the wall. So, remember to put a washer behind the screw, or it'll just pull out.
So where's the other end going?
Sorry?
Where's the other end where they all combine?
They all combine, and they actually go through a hole. That's a door that opens up into the side wall.
Dropping down behind the...
Yeah.
Okay.
And they go through a hole. And can I just say, when we had a mice problem, where we actually had some mice that we had to get rid of, I was sitting there at the shack, and this is up there, and I kept seeing this little, at this corner of my eye going, something just moved. Something just moved. And then I stood there, and this bloody little mice
running up and down inside.
Running up, using the coax as a little highway. So we got rid of them pretty quick.
You obviously didn't see the cable housekeeping problem on the internet last night.
Oh, okay.
A rack, similar to a rack out in the other room, and probably 40 or 50 coax cables or some sort going to it. But the guy wanted to lay another cable. He couldn't. He was forestalled. There was probably 3 to 4 metres of very pretty fat snake coiled around the loom.
Oh, there's cable management.
That's the change management. That's the change management.
It's been
There will be no change.
I'm not going anywhere near that.
Not change anything here.
So another idea is, and I can't claim this one. I actually got this one off the internet. When you've got all these patch cables and audio cables and stuff that you've got to try and have some semblance of order in, and not just drop them all in a box and end up having to
Go and buy some more.
deal with them later. The racks that come in ovens, the steel racks that come in ovens, you can usually pick some of them up at resource tip shops, and they're really nice lengths, because if you cut them in half and then you fold up the ends that you cut, what you end up with is nice little slots that you can drop cables into, and they sit there because of the, well and truly. And this went into AR magazine one year, so you can see that's one that's slightly full.
What problem?
This one that's got a little bit of space still left on it. And literally all you need is a hacksaw, a file and a vise and you can do this. And I've just got it on the end of the equipment rack, so...
Angle grinder.
Well, angle grinder, yeah, okay, hacksaw, angle grinder. Yeah, goes that way.
For running lightweight cables like Cat 6 and things like that, but also for storage of patch cords and clip leads and all sorts of bits and pieces, consider using some cable tray,
Yep.
plastic variety, that has lots of fingers down the
Solid
side.
duct.
Yeah, yep.
Turn it on its side, screw it to the wall, knock out a finger wherever you want the cable to drop.
Yep.
Because then if you accidentally bash into it with your shoulder, your head or whatever, chances are the finger's going to give
Yeah.
and not do damage.
Yep.
But also if you then decide, I want a bigger space, it's only a matter of clipping out another finger.
Another finger.
That slot duct's pretty good.
That's a good. And in fact, that would be good, because you could put that on the side of the shelves in the shack that you can see there.
Well, you can use it in your workshop for all your clip leads, for
Just have
power leads, for everything.
jam that have the connectors just sort of pushing the thing down.
Yeah, that's good.
We put a heap of those things that you buy for hanging like your bikes and bits and pieces in the workshop.
Yep.
We've screwed them to the wall at work and just have like out in our little test bay area, we've just got 1 metre, 2 metre, 5 metre Cat 5 leads and fibre leads and stuff just hanging in a pile. So if you need a 2 metre lead, you can just walk over and just. And they're actually like draped over.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. The other one.
Still on cable management.
Yeah. Go for it. No, go for it.
Yes, I've come up with an idea for cable management, and it was because of some of the experimental nights that we do here. I found that I've got a box, I'm putting all my stuff in, like soldering iron, you've got your 240 volt high DC lead that plugs in or whatever, and I'm either using a rubber band or something like that to try and get all the cables together and put them in a box, otherwise it gets all tangled up and everything. But one day I was looking at these power packs for laptops, and there was a whole heap of them, and I saw these, the way that they do that, and I thought, well, they do it on the DC side of it, what about if you did it on the other side? So here's one that we prepared a little bit earlier. You use some of the Velcro that you buy in the rolls and a cable tie, and you just cable tie it on the end, so it's just loose hanging like that, and then when you want to, you've got your loose cable, you can just fold it together, wrap it around, it's really, really quick, and then it's nice and neat. You can throw it in a pile and you don't get a big tangle. So I thought that was a pretty good idea for cable.
You can actually buy those in short lengths as well, different colours.
Yeah.
With a slot already in them.
Yeah,
This
Comes
is
with
just
it,
a
you do
quick
the
and
patch
dirty
bays and
way
stuff,
of
and comes with it.
They don't necessarily stay in the right spot, and you end up with the
Yeah,
cable
you
tied
lose them,
wrong
yeah.
into the lead. and-
Whereas that's fixed.
Yeah, that's on
Oh,
the
yeah,
cable.
you
can tighten it up so that it stays.
Oh, right.
Yeah, yeah.
It's been a while
So-
since I used one. I can't remember.
Yeah, I thought it was a pretty handy way of doing something.
And this stuff, I think it was 2 rolls of this for like $10 and free shipping. The other thing that I use this for, squid pole, when we go doing SOTA, there's a great long length of this that you can put around the tree or whatever, and hold it there. And I also use that to go around the rucksack that I use to walk the stuff in with. So that's the same stuff. That's exactly the same stuff. So
Can you pass that?
roll
No.
The advantage of
The cable.
the cable.
This one?
The advantage of the cable tie method is that should you need to get the cable tie off, you can just clip the cable tie,
Yeah.
and you've got your rope free.
Yeah, you're right, those ones that you get that have got the slot in them tend to wander, and you're winding up cables and you'll end
Or
up
they
with it
come
like
off.
halfway along,
Yeah.
which is...
Yeah.
And to fix them, I've seen people actually use hot milk glue and all sorts of other glues, and it ends up as either a sticky mess or something that you can't handle,
And
or
with perishape after a while as well.
where
So
you get a sharp edge and cut your finger as you handle it.
That could be done a bit neater. We just quickly did it like just before we started. So.
How you doing?
Good. Here you go, Phil.
Not bad. So the other innovative idea, I have a FD 81847 that I take out on field days, because I've been encouraged to do field days just recently.
Apparently, yes.
And the 847 was actually permanently mounted in the shack, and I need an idea that enables me to actually get the 847 out and portable. And I thought about this, and I had some great little U-shaped bits of plastic, and I don't know where they came from, but probably the Resource Tip Shop, but anyway. And so I screwed these onto the side. There are mounting screw holes on the side of the rig. Screwed them onto the end of the rig on both sides, and then folded up a little bit of sheet metal, and then on one side I've got a keeper, which basically means that you can't just pull the rig out. It's got a screw on it, and so literally undo the screw and I can pull the rig out and unconnect it, and I go away, and I then go back in and I do the reverse, and that's it. So that's the photo of both sides of it. That is just an idea for a quick release mount for a rig.
Good to get radios up off the beach too, I reckon. It's always nice to have them.
Yeah, and it's up underneath the shelf. So that's
For rigs and gear that needs to go in and out fairly often, ABC came up with an inverted tray, but with triangle sides and flanges, so that bolts into the rack.
Yep.
The gear just sits on it. The gear is not fixed whatsoever. It means that there is no screws to lose, there's no time to do it. You can simply reach around, unplug, pull it out, you're away.
So it's
Cool.
effectively not permanently fixed, it's just sitting
It
on a
just
shelf.
sits there in its own little space, nothing touches it, it can't get anything dropped on top of it because there's another tray above it, either fixed or same arrangement. But it's just a quick way. You can buy the trays ready made, but it's much easier, of course, and more fun to do your own if you can find the material and the bender to do it with.
So another idea that people who frequent the DATV nights, this is really simple but really effective. This is a scrap bit of wood, bit of Tas oak, that has a bit of
Springy wire.
I think it's actually welding rod, brass welding rod, that is bent into a loop. On one end is put in, and the other end just has a nice little flat on it. And if you're doing surface mount, it's worth its weight in gold, because you can put it in, hold down the surface mount component, solder one end, and you're there. So that is literally a piece of bent wire.
Just be mindful of the fact that if you don't exactly get it over the centre of the
Oh,
component,
and it goes.
here, and you'll go, wow.
So yeah, that's
Maybe we should have a little guard around it
Yeah.
so you can catch it.
You got to wear safety glasses.
Yeah.
well, yes, yeah, we do advocate personal protective equipment.
Or a bit of blue tack on the end of the wire.
Well, yes, yeah.
Some of the components, that's small, but
It would get lost in the blue tack and you'd never be seen again.
You end up solving the blue tack.
One of the biggest aids in the shack or a workshop is a strong torch that you lay along the floor.
Headlamp.
the beauty of LED, you can have incredibly bright lights without actually having to break into a sweat.
Correct. Correct. Another idea is this is a Anderson connector double adapter.
I see.
So it goes from 1 to 2. And literally there's some decent sized wire in the back of there that just has a piece of large heat shrink over it. And it gives you a 2 from 1. The other idea is a bit of plastic with some binding posts on it and some connectors that literally does the same thing, that gives you some binding post.
As opposed to the age-old method of just twisting the wire and hoping it doesn't come off.
Correct.
I do a similar thing too, but I've got them back to back.
Yep.
And I've got a link on the plug that goes in, so that it converts it to 24 volts.
Okay.
So you can run them as just with one type of plug. You run them as 12 volt systems.
Yep.
And then if you want 24 volts, you use the other lead, plug and lead.
Yep.
And instead of being parallel, the series is them.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's really easy.
Okay.
And you just need
Which-
colour coding.
It's really easy to do.
Yeah,
That's
brilliant.
and you could put it this way. This is a double adapter. You could have any number of these. You probably need to increase the size of the wire on this side, but you can have any sort of combination that you actually want. So,
Well, you get those boxes that they make.
from Waverley.
Waverley, yeah.
Yeah, the power pole.
They're really
Power
good.
pole.
Very good kit.
So, and in fact, there's quite a few of them in the experimenters' nights. A few of them, and they now come.
A little LED voltmeter on the end.
Correct, with the voltmeter as well built in, which is really, really good.
If you score any old UPSs, they've got Anderson plugs inside them, but they've got different colours, and the colours match. They'll join up the same colour, but they won't go cross colour. They're actually coded.
Oh, so they're actually different profile in the actual connector.
There's
Okay.
like reds and blues.
There's about 10 or 12 different colours in the 50 amp range, and they're all slightly different end profile.
Except black and grey.
Yeah, black and grey are the same.
Black and grey will mate.
Yeah,
Will they?
yeah.
They're the
Right.
only two that do.
They were originally
Blue shorts and you-
designed
Just
to
strap pieces on.
allow for different voltages, but it's just easy to allow for different currents within the 50 amp capacity. What I didn't realise was that up until about 12 months, 2 years ago, that those little fellows have different rating, current rating pins.
Correct.
And you
There's
get
30
different
and
sizes
45 amp.
in those.
The same as for the 50 amp ones.
The 50's got the same rating with different wire sizes.
And there's also another variation of their product that allows you to have multiple things all stacked together a bit differently than those.
Okay. And you can also get the panel. Hand around. The panel mount. So you put a rectangle hole and the panel mount, which then comes with a pin that enables you to put a combination of. They come in 2s, 4s, 6s, and 8s, and I think even bigger than that. So you can put
You can make them all
multiples.
together in
Correct.
one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
you can when you move the pin around, the blanking pin around, you can actually have like 8 different versions of the same size shell,
that's right.
which is quite neat.
It's So there's lots of flexibility with Anderson connectors, and I'm currently trying to move to all Anderson connectors, which is proving to be a bit of a challenge.
What are these rated at now?
They're the 45s, I think, or they're the
Yeah, there's two. There's I think it's
35.
25 and
30. It's 30. It's 15 and 35, isn't it?
Yeah, and there is a 45.
Probably,
Yeah. No. There's a,
But it's
probably a good idea to market, eh?
I think
Thinking if you made a couple of these
I
for
think
different things.
the 35 and the 45 go into each other, don't they?
yes,
Yeah.
they all go into each other
Yeah.
in the power poles.
yeah.
It's the difference is the current carrying capacity of the wire that's put in.
That's right. Yeah, and that's they come to suit different
Yeah.
size wire. So.
There is one catch for the 50 amp ones. Well, there's two catches. One is if you go and buy the Anderson style connectors, the pins do not necessarily conform to the original Anderson, and if you try fitting them between different plastic housings, they may or may not fit.
Yeah.
You can buy
The other catch with the 50 amp ones is, while you normally make them like that, you can make them offset, and that's really bad on a car. When you've got the trailer and the car, if it's already connected ground through the tow coupling, you connect the positive side to the negative side. There is nothing to stop them making offset.
Yeah. Okay. That's a bit dead.
As a
So
visual,
when you go looking online for Anderson connectors, you look for the genuine ones.
Yeah.
But having found the genuine sort, if you buy a bag of 10, the cost per each
Yeah.
drops
Well,
dramatically
mob out of the States.
down to $2 or
you buy them
$3 a unit.
out of Victoria. The
And that
DC
includes tips.
Oh, there's an Anderson shop
There's
Australia or
correct.
something or other.
Anderson,
And-
Australia.
Yeah, and their prices are comparable to the eBay
And I bought
cheapest.
some
Especially if you buy in bulk.
And you can get every colour and every contact size.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've bought a few because I've been going over to 50 amperes for everything. It just makes life so much easier. And there's some little tiny ones too that are good for maybe 5 amps or 10 amps. And so I'm just I've got a linear that's got all modular plastic sockets in it. And the pins are losing their tension, have lost their tension, and so the heat's been going up the wires, it's chopping the wires, so I'm doing it all in Anderson's. I thought I've got a 115 volt fan on there as well to fix up. So I just use these little ones for the 115 volts because they've got quite a high AC rating. I think you might have 250 volts AC or 200 volts AC, which is pretty good. So you can sort of mix and match a fair bit. And because the big ones have the hole through them, you can actually piggyback you can piggyback one into the AC one on the top, and the other one's just free.
Cool.
The beauty of that with Andersons too is that it's a bit interchangeable, and if you bring it along to a club night or whatever,
Ah, and
someone
you
else
can
has
change
got the same gear, you
config.
can just, everyone's got sockets.
There isn't a standard for Anderson connectors.
Well, they've got.
Can I just say?
Which, for those ones, for those ones there isn't.
Correct.
For the grey ones.
Yeah, they've got
Yeah,
plus
no,
and
because
minus.
they're fixed. They're fit. These you can.
Oh, you can have them parallel, you can have them 90 degrees. Yeah, you can go berserk.
So yeah.
And I always read text that crosses on my 50 amperes, just so you've got that visual as well.
Will your 50 amperes go into that side?
No, they're too big. They're ones about that wide.
They're the grey.
The grey ones.
grey
Yeah.
And they run at a couple of bucks each, or?
I think I was paying
Are
about.
you getting more?
I think I paid maybe a few years ago. I haven't run out yet. $5 each,
Right,
and the pins were maybe about 60 cents each, 50 cents each. But you'd buy because I bought the pins that take big wire. I bought the pins that take the smaller wire. So I think one's maybe 8 gauge American, and the other one's maybe 12 gauge or something like that. Perhaps.
The three sizes are 13 square millimetre, which is 6 gauge, 8 square millimetre, which is 8 gauge, and 10 or 12.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you buy the genuine Anderson ones, they've got the number
They've got
on the pin, so you can
and
see what
age.
you've got.
So if you bulk buy them, it's
Yeah,
still.
you bulk buy them.
Yeah.
And if you buy them from Repco or any of those places, they're about $15 each.
You pay through the net. The only thing I haven't found cheap yet is that you can get a boot that goes over the back to waterproofing.
Oh,
To keep the strut going down.
Yeah, yeah.
And they're really expensive.
And it's harder to buy the coloured ones here.
Yeah.
I've only found them reliably online. But you look for the place that says that they're the genuine one, gives you the photo, it says Anderson across the back.
Yeah.
over
It
the
doesn't
line.
say Anderson on there.
Yeah, that's a
Watch
good
out.
point.
That's a great idea.
But the other thing to remember with that, the bigger Anderson connectors is, do not solder them. They will solder, but don't, because the heat required just travels up the cable, frizzles your insulation, crystallises the solder, does everything backwards.
I've soldered mine.
Yeah.
But what I do is I use a block of wood and I bore a hole so I can stand my Anderson connector up in it, and I hit it with a 60-watt weller, load up the hole with solder, and I've got a pre-tinned bit of wire, that I'm using, and I just go bang bang in, hold it just so it's set, and then you're away. And because they're in free air, they go off pretty quickly. They don't wick back up the wire, but you can't just join it all together and try and do it.
But you then got to still support the cable for a certain distance back.
Yeah, I support it very good.
If you go the other method and use the proper crimpers,
Yes.
and they are big fellas,
Yeah.
then you've got free moving cable much closer to the thing. You're still wise to heat shrink and support.
And with the 15 and 35s, the small ones, they do need to be crimped, because it actually relies on there being some play in the back of the connector.
So it didn't shear off.
Well, not only shear off, it actually is required so that they mate properly. Because
They move within
correct.
the housing.
Yes. So
They
don't
actually
fill-
need the movement in the back of the connector to
To
make
be
sure
able
that
to-
they actually
yeah,
mate
right, okay.
properly.
do
Because
not,
it looks like it's sprung, is it? Or
There-
it's just
There's a little bit in there.
Spring,
Yeah.
don't fill the back up with silicon to stop gunk getting
No, because you'll suddenly find it
because
doesn't
all of a
move.
sudden, instead of making like that, they make like that.
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
good.
And so just be aware,
They're supposed to move.
correct.
Yeah, I'm sort of a bit old-fashioned as much as I like having solder in there in the bucket, so if you do use them outside, they get water and they're not going to corrode and cause you grief 5 years time. But yeah, I agree, you've got to be judicious with it.
And I assume the large surface area gives you enough movement that if you're
They still
doing it, they
work.
still make good contact, even if they.
There's two humps that come together on
Yeah.
the ramp arrangement, and they go over the top of each other and then down the other side.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
as
so
they
if
go
they
over
go
that, they widen.
Like that,
Yeah,
like
they-
the figure eight locking in
Yeah,
base.
that's right.
Yeah, right.
And that, the bit of flat spring steel underneath, it locks into the bottom. So it's got a bit of compliance that when they snap together, it's both are pushing
Yeah,
apart.
it's good.
It's good system.
And every time you unplug it, kind of auto cleans the
Yeah,
the
that's right.
tabs as well. Yeah,
In cleaning, out cleaning.
that's right. Yeah.
While we're talking about this,
Yeah.
can I get some opinions? Last weekend I made up some heavy duty 35 square millimetre cable into lugs for some very large batteries. I had the correct crimping tool, I crimped them. It was a small hydraulic one. The width of the crimping tool was only a bit less than half of the area on the lug where you crimp. So I thought, gee, which end do I put it? Do I put it in the middle? So I gave it 2 crimps. It still left a bit in the end. Now, rightly or wrongly, I decided to solder them. I used a very small torch. I had it vertical, mounted vertically, in fact hanging like yours. I applied it very quickly. It's surprising how quickly with a torch. The insulation wasn't affected. I had the heat shrink on the cable well back out of the road, and anyway, I got it into the point, the solder, very quickly where it came up to the edge of the connector. Now, there won't be any movement in this cable. It's a very short cable that goes from a battery box with 6 2-volt cells right up in series, and it was just straight to a fuse. When I say straight, it was about 10 inches in the old measure, and it was able to flex, but there's nowhere where it would need to. Now, is that doing the wrong thing with a heavy conductor like that, soldering it as well? What do you
No.
think?
No, certainly not.
You've
Okay.
crimped it first, that's the first thing.
Yeah,
Soldering now just helps with the electrical
yeah,
connection.
yeah,
The crimping is the mechanical one.
yeah,
And they say that if you want to make a perfect joint, but there is no movement in the system,
yeah.
in other words, it's not vibrating, it's not being taken in and out, it's not
No.
playing in and out, yours is
Yeah,
the ideal
okay.
situation.
If you have the correct crimping tool with the correct lug, with the correct size wire, you don't need to solder.
Yeah, that's, I was just going to say.
Yeah, well,
Notice all those corrects.
yeah.
But soldering
The
does
crimp-
protect against corrosion.
The crimp should end up so that each facet of the crimp meets the next one.
I mean, I did wonder because they were belled at the end. The lugs were belled, so it was fairly easy. But boy, it was so tight. I wondered whether should I only solder this. But of course, once you'd soldered it, you couldn't crimp it.
I occasionally drill holes in the hole end of the lug where it's bolted, crimp it on, and then solder from
From the tip.
that end.
Yeah.
And the solder doesn't go back past the crimp. Theoretically, I shouldn't have to. but
I've got a
I
Chinese crimper that was maybe a couple $100, and it's got up to 30 or 40 mil square. Yeah,
Those
so
little
yeah, hydraulic
things.
The wheels
Yeah.
that turn around.
If you buy a Cabac, you can buy Cabac hex crimpers that have got like little rotatable
Yeah.
wheels, and you can buy one that'll do up to, I think, 50 square mil,
Yeah, I can't remember.
and they're only like about that long. And then
Yeah.
if you go to 70,
Like that.
90 and 120 square mil, the handles are about that long.
Yeah, much bigger.
But they do a really good job, and it takes about 4. You can actually do 3, maybe 4, depending on the size of the lug.
Yeah.
Just put it on there, crimp it to just take the pressure off, then just let it off and just move it along a bit. And those Cabac ones actually have the number of this cross-sectional size in the actual little thing, so it'll come up with 50 square mil.
Yeah, mine's
Yeah,
the same.
yeah.
That's how you'll know that you've got the
Yeah.
right one.
And when if you've got a long lug to do, you do the first one, and you don't do it hard up to the tip because you'll actually distort the very end of it. You come back, maybe a few millimetres,
Yeah,
and then you'll do that one. And then when I progress along, I have an overlap with the previous one because that way it keeps the hex the same.
yeah,
And you can just gently bring it down so you line the hex up.
yeah.
Then you crimp, then you
Yeah.
move, and you
Yeah.
come out,
Yeah.
and you stop where the bell end is. I stop just before the bell end.
Because you can buy those lugs with either the bell end or the non-bell end.
Yeah.
I've always wondered why the hell you would have the bell end. Cause
You try and put them in.
we
a non-bell run.
we put a bit of
It's
heat
got
shrink
5
over it,
cable.
like a bit of that glue heat shrink, which
Yeah.
gives it a
Yeah.
nice bit of mechanical
Yeah.
strength as well. And to me, it just looks a bit odd if you've got the bell end on it. So we
Yeah.
always, just maybe a personal
Yeah.
preference, I like to get the ones without it. If you cut them with a nice set of shears and take the insulation off, sort of, it's not too bad.
If you want to source those lugs, take yourself into Sparko,
Yeah.
and you'll pull out the boxes, and you can choose which ones you want.
Yeah.
You ask them.
AWM have got
I can't
sizes
remember
from
where I got
4
them. I
mil up
bought
to-
them a few years ago. I got a collection for an extraordinarily good price. It was Australian stock in Australia. I think it was in Western Australia somewhere. But gee, I was, I wondered what they'd be like. But they're heavy duty. They're very good quality. Absolutely delighted with them. And
You go
they were
super
something
cheap,
like a quarter or even a fifth or a sixth of the price that you'd pay for them.
If you go to Supercheap or Whitworth or anywhere that you think would have a source of these, yes, but you'll pay dearly.
Yeah.
Even
Go to
DW.
Sparko and the cheapest.
Well, electrical's wholesale.
Still on the dollar range,
Yeah.
When
like a
I
lot
get there,
cheaper.
Sparking.
Technically, you should use the correct crimper for that size lug, and if you buy a lug from another company, it may not work correctly.
Mm.
And there are generally tables available. You get your micrometer out and measure the width across the flats to find out if you've done it correctly.
Mm.
And if there are occasions where you can go down one size on one of the print dies so that you actually do it a bit tighter if the cable is not quite right or others. It's, yeah.
I've used the wrong lugs before, and of course you get little edges to them, ridges to them, and these, the set of dies cover pretty well the whole.
The lugs you get,
I think it's 6 different dies, and it's stamped on them.
Are not good.
No, they're not good.
So you know what you're using. But yes, the overlapping is what I did. I just slackened it off enough to slip it along so that it was all lined up and straight.
To change it, do you
But
OCD?
you know,
have to
once you've done the first one, the rest were, you know, very, very quick.
I've
Very
used
easy
50
to do.
amp Andersons to start my car.
Pardon?
I've used 50 amp Andersons. I've got an extension lead for extending out to a radio. It's about maybe from metre tricky long. And I
Yeah.
had it out one day, and I've got some universal ends like lugged ends, clampy ends. I can't remember. There's about 3 or 4 different ones. I just made them all up at the same time. They all go in
Yeah.
one bag. And I thought, oh, damn, it jump started a car. I was fiddling around with it, letting the battery go flat. So I just ran the Andersons out with this lead, hooked onto the battery, bang off it went. You know, they're fine. I think their 50 amp rating is pretty much underrated a fair bit.
The same contact of the 50s is used in the 75 amp versions of those ones.
Mm.
You wouldn't do it all the time, but yeah, once off.
Another idea, as people know, I wear shorts all the time. And I came across some pants in the back of the wardrobe the other day, which I haven't worn for a long time, and realised that I could actually make some shorts out of them because they were long pants. So I cut the legs off, and I went, I can actually use those legs. And so, with a bit of judicious sewing down the back, and also then a little loop at the top, which you then put a cord into, you've got a utility bag, which I use for antennas, all sorts of things. So, and can I just say, I was told from my wife, who I got some hints off of, does anyone know the hint you use to get the cord through the, once you've sewn the loop, how you get the cord through really easily?
Put a
darning needle.
little
Safety pin. A safety
And
pin
just-
on the
and
end
just
of the
push it
cord,
through.
and you can then push it all the way through. And I just went, that's brilliant.
Mate, you're a tech guy, you should use an electrical conduit snake.
6 feet away.
Well, actually, you could probably use a bit of cable tie.
If you've goofed and made the hole too small for the safety pin, you use a darning needle and pour cotton through first, and then pull the main line.
There you go. So, utility bags.
And they're colour coordinated.
And they're colour coordinated because I put different coloured beads on the end so that these things don't disappear back inside and I have to get my safety pin thing out again.
4 heavy duty versions of the same. You use your old jeans
So you must have long
legs where you've worn holes in the knees or around the pocket or wherever, and you've got yourself extra heavy duty.
So,
They also make a good bag for putting your black and billy in if you happen to.
Yeah. Save everything else and the camping stuff get all black.
I'm handy with a sewing machine, much to my wife's behest. The other thing is 18650 batteries, LiPo batteries. These are notebook power supplies. So there are a la Ron's power supply here, notebook. They will contain 6 of them. They all contain 18650. They're a standard form factor. In fact, these are the batteries which you will find in the Tesla motor vehicles in millions in Jamestown.
2700s.
Yeah, okay. Standard form factor batteries. But you will find a couple of thousand of them in Tesla vehicles. In Jamestown, the battery of the nation, they are all made up of these. all put together.
Really?
Yep. God, that's
There's about 8,000 in a Tesla car.
There's a couple of dead cells in there, so someone's got to find it.
so you can rescue these from those power supplies really easily. You can crack that case open. They are all welded together. I won't go into spot welding this year, but you can. They're really nice. 18650 and lipo and nickel metal hydride, and also other standards battery chargers that you can use. There are there's a whole industry out there of battery holders for this form factor that enable you to put X number together and series them, parallel them into a block. There's literally a whole industry around this. So when you think about throwing out your laptop battery, think about rescuing the batteries out of them, because you can use them for all sorts of things. Just as an example, and this is actually Larry put us the ATV night onto the component testers. These are component testers which are all of $5 and free shipping from China.
Something ridiculous, yeah.
It's just ridiculous. Now the only strange thing is they run off 3.7 volt batteries. Guess what? So there's a battery holder with a 3.7 volt, yeah, you've got your component tester, and that sits on my bench. Because if you happen to have a component, you can stick it in. There's a transistor in there right at the moment. It tells you what the base collector and emitter are on the transistor, as well as the gain of the transistor, etc., and what whether it's an NPN or a PNP, as well as any other component that you care to throw into it. So
It doesn't matter which way around you put the component in?
Doesn't matter.
So
Works it out.
So are they good battery packs or bad battery packs where only one or two cells has failed?
Well, only one or two cells have failed that I found I pulled 3 apart, and I think there was 4 cells out of those 3 batteries that actually had a cell that wouldn't charge. This goes through a cycle
charge it
to
find out the bad ones.
well and truly.
When it comes to chargers for odd things, go to Hobby King, I think it is. They have zillions of chargers for different uses.
But if you were to put them into a block, you've got whatever voltage configuration you put them into at pretty decent current.
Justin, what about balancing them, particularly if you've got parallel strings of, half a dozen or...
This is where, and Rod's spot on, Hobby King have a whole lot of types of chargers for this type of battery that enables you to do that balanced charging.
Yeah.
And the companies that produce the little things the little plastic forms that you put this into, give you they actually have it arranged so that you get at where you need them to do the balanced charging, you actually have an output that you can then plug the charger into. So it's a whole industry.
Yeah.
It's just amazing. And this is these are what would have normally been thrown away as dead laptop batteries.
The serious battery-powered hobby model world have been there and sorted it all out well before we even thought of the question.
Last thing from me. You've heard me bang on incessantly about SOTA. This is my 8-band link dipole. There's 3 things I just wanted to point out on here. One is this is advertising board. This is solid. No, it's not core flute.
Yeah.
But it's solid.
Yeah.
It's a solid plastic that I used both for the insulators between each of the links, but also for the winders. Now I'll give credit to Warren 7WN here. We originally had on the links little clips, little alligator clips, and the little alligator clips that you buy from JCar and China and whatever else are great. However, the chrome on them rusts really quickly if they're exposed to weather. So Warren put me on to, and the radio controlled guys, I actually bought these from a radio controlled. These are they're little sleeves with a little element that pushes into the sleeve. The key to it is they're gold plated.
Yeah.
And you can buy them from China and free shipping for nothing. Like, you get 50 of these, 50 pairs of these, and these are, I think, 2 or 3 mil ones, 2 mil ones, and they cost you like $2. It's just ridiculous. And this has been out and got wet many times, and I haven't seen any sign of rust or anything on them. So, and the last thing on here is I've got, these are pegs on the end where you can peg the end of the link dipoles. This is sealing hanger wire from the Resource Tip Shop, and quite thick and quite stiff, and you need a vise and a hammer to do the bend. But that's wire that I got from the Resource Tip Shop, and it's the stuff that they hang suspended ceilings with. And can I just say, if you ever put this into your carry-on luggage, take the pegs out, because they won't let you on with the pegs in there.
Why?
Is there a weapon?
Because it's a weapon.
Oh, right. Pegs are a weapon.
At least something that looks like that. Because it went through the X-ray 3 times, and she said, "Who owns this?" And I went, and she said, "What's these?" And I said, "They're pegs." And she said, "You can't take them on board." So I said, "Okay, ditch them." The rest of it's fine.
Those pegs. I thought you meant clothes pegs.
All the wiring you like,
Rest of it's
will
fine.
go through, but it's all
So-
good, no.
But the key thing was those connectors. That was a fantastic find, and they are retailed as radio control power connectors.
Before, when I did mine before, we just saw all that lot. I used the small 15 amp Anderson connector as opposed to the build-up.
Yes.
But it's just the connectors, the advertising board.
Again, you're only running a few watts. It's not like running
It's-
a kilowatt through it.
And in fact, I don't run a bellon on that link dipole because at 5 watts, I don't care. And it cuts down the weight. So I'm looking for, and you probably felt that. That's a kilogram. If you were carrying a normal sealed lead acid battery, it's 3.3 kilograms.
Yeah.
So that's a kilogram, and you've got. I haven't run out of power in a couple of days of operating.
So the same physical size, is it the same rating?
Yes, exactly the same. It's a drop-in replacement.
Use the peg yet, or I didn't
The
quite
difference
hear.
with this is this has got 3,000 cycles
They're in there pretty
on it,
permanently.
whereas
I
the
thought
sealed
you might
lead
just
acid
carry
battery
them
only
there.
has it's less than 1,000.
Or to
I
stiffen
bought
this.
a fold-out solar panel, 12 volt, 150 watts with a built-in regulator, or regulator's little pouch. So I thought that's pretty neat, rather than take 4 batteries, just take it. And even on a cloudy day, it puts power out. But the thing is, I'm a bit sus. Like they say that you can charge those like a conventional lead acid battery,
You can.
but this JCar solar panel and JCar that came with a regulator, it makes the batteries pretty hot. And I sort of go, ooh, this is not too flash, so I've got to investigate that a bit further yet.
And the difference with these is there is electronics in there
Yeah,
to
that's
do
right.
your balance
All the rest
charging
of it.
and all of that
But
sort
I
of
reckon
stuff.
Which is why it has maximum currents for charge and discharge,
Correct.
Yeah.
which is a damn nuisance if you want to run a 100 watt rig,
Justin,
because it'll be 10 amps, I think.
What are the pegs used for again?
Pegs are for the ends.
What happens if you're
Just to
parallel?
hold it down.
So it's just to hold them down.
Oh, right.
10 peg.
And the 10 well and truly. Now, I don't use them very often because you usually, if you're on top of a mountain, you've got a rock or a bush or something
Yeah.
you can tie
A
to.
rock or a tree, so
But I have used them a couple of times.
Take a heap of these and you put it in your bag, it's probably sort of handy.
They're probably
Well,
got
true.
batteries in.
Just a bit, one use that's the only downside
You can
really.
always rest some of them. Well,
All the thing like
we could probably arrest somebody using that too. Because I tell you what, if you put a couple of lines around that,
Yeah.
you'd be going to get it off.
What batteries will the IC705 use?
Okay. That uses
Off a handheld.
handheld batteries.
ID51.
There's standard form factor on their D-Star handheld ID51,
ID5100 or something?
ID51
Yeah.
or 5100.
Like the old slide-on battery packs.
They actually clip into the back.
There's one or two or multiple?
No, I think there's only one. Not sure about that, but there's only one. They only showed one on that
You get 10
video.
watts out of it?
I don't know.
For how long?
Not very long, I suspect.
It's 5 watts on its internal batteries
5 watts
Yeah.
and 10 watts on
and
it.
10 watts
On an external, yeah. So, anyway. Any other ideas? Or problems, or?
Question.
Yes?
I've been looking at this nice power supply that I got, and I'm wondering, what do the colour codes mean in America?
Black is active.
Black is active.
Black is active, and white is neutral,
Yep.
True.
and green is earth.
Yep.
Good.
As long as you've got it the
That's
right
the
way.
first question. Second question is, in order to get high current out of this, they provide 3 little screw lugs. So what do I do? With some heavy duty cable, I undo the thing and split it into 3.
No, I wouldn't worry if you only want, if you want 20 amps, just get a piece of 6mm cable and crimp a forked end onto it and just put it straight under the screw. It'll carry 25 amps,
Just a single one.
I think.
Yeah.
If you sort of get to 30 amps and maybe 40 amps, then the lugs, the internal strips are just not big enough to put. I would recommend
And if you're really
Just
worried
run it
about it, make 2 little leads up and Siamese and then solder them together to your main cable and then heat shrink it.
Like on the back of your 9700 power lead.
Yep.
9700 power lead is roughly 3 square mil or 4 square mil, and then it wires out just before it gets to the plug.
because that
2
cable
watts
wouldn't
of
fit inside
2.5
the
square mil.
connector.
Yeah.
But I think just one, just get some
Just
wires of the right size for the wire and
Negative.
just crimp them on with the proper crimpers.
Yep, thank you.
The other thing with the power connector, Rex, is we can just give you a. You're going to want it for Hawaii, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'll just give you a normal one that we can just zip the end off.
Yeah, I have a few of them.
No. Okay. Oh, A normal one with an adapter that goes to American, so that way you can use it here. This got
Obviously you're
the
envisaging
colour coding
that
right.
plug in Hawaii.
Yes. If I go.
Cool. What else? Other ideas?
If you're building a new house, I'd put one, or got them to put one conduit down through the studs and down to underneath where you
Okay.
could get at it, so that if you ever later on wanted to run a wire from up in the roof space down, then you've got the
You've got the-
conduit there. The only thing I didn't do was I should have put more in different
150
places.
mil conduit.
No, just the electrical, orange electrical. The Sparky's just popped it in for me.
Oh, I put 4-inch pipe from the roof down to the floor. Plastic.
the trick is to find a place to put it without the wife going crazy. What's this doing coming down in my hallway?
Diversion. Diversion.
It's inside the wall, so it goes from the roof space down underneath.
You've got to find, to get 4-inch, so you can't
Oh,
put
that's-
that in the wall.
no, that's different.
But fortunately there was a bend with a little triangle at just the right place to put it.
You'd always use the oblong downpipe.
Yeah,
That might work.
yeah. Well, about a 4-inch downpipe.
If you think you'll need 150 mil conduit, run 4.
But the same applies to your meter box. Where you bring all the cables coming up from underneath the floor, if you can't get a conduit in, at least drill a few extra holes in the bottom of the plate and up near the box and put a mouse in, a string on a peg that you can attach things to and pull up and down at a later date as you add the circuitry.
Never have too many.
I don't even think about putting a couple of conduits through the slab from one side to the other. So if you decide you've got to do something from one side of the house to the other, you've actually got a couple of points to get across and mice inside them. As long as you know where they are on the wall, you can always access them. Just measure them out.
The other thing is we had a concrete driveway going up the side of the house and around, so I put in a couple of 37 mil conduits underneath it, so you can access it both sides. One way into the cables goes down through that and up the mast, so it doesn't have to come across on a continuum.
Okay, that's a good idea.
White.
It's neutral.
I think Richard's right. Where if you think you need a 50 mil conduit, put in 100 mil.
Yeah, if you think you need 1, put in 4.
Because I know the pipe that I put in down the driveway to get my coaxes to the backyard is full. And if I have to put something else in there, I actually have to put more out.
The beauty of it is you don't have to subduct if it's your own.
Am I right in thinking that the pin layout on the US
Well, I was just going to say, the recipe checks that.
is actually the same as
You would
the
think
Australian,
that
it's
would
only
be
that
that would be active and that would be neutral.
I think they're reversed. No, because the reason
Both
I've
pins
been
the same size?
the reason I can say this is
Are they both the same size, or is one wider than the other?
And they're both the same. I'm assuming
If
that's
you
the
look-
earth.
if you look on the end of it, some of them have actually got labels.
Yeah,
You got an A and an N. I've just been through this because I needed to make a new 150 volt transformer,
Oh, that is neutral. It's got an end beside it.
and I couldn't. I had the
Check,
right
check,
plates.
check,
I had
check,
the wrong sockets. And in the end, I found a couple of different ones, and there was no auto transformer. I took the sockets out of the auto transformer, and I'm using them with
Where did you
the
see
American
it?
150 volt
Just
transformer.
on
And it all
the
works, but
outside there. I think
yeah,
there's
the
an
colour
end.
codes aren't quite right.
yeah, I was quite surprised when
Can be different
I
sizes.
saw this a couple of months ago.
The active
That their
ones
pin
are
layout is the same as ours, it's just that
No,
the
these were all the same.
pins are orientated in the different
We've got
directions.
some QSC speakers once that came with some really cool blocking IEC connectors, blue ones, that when you put them into the back of a powered speaker, they actually lock in. And they came with like nice Australian plugs. However, the active and neutral transposed on every single one of them.
IEC power cords are usually up to the same configuration. Every now and again you'll find one that's active and neutral reversed.
We found more
Never
12 speakers than
arrived.
12 or more.
We found
Just so
several-
consistent.
Oh, I know, right. There's probably a switch.
That old chestnut.
We found several IEC leads reversed
So
at work,
it's that
and
one,
the techs
that's
were absolutely
active, is it?
amazed that
That
somebody
is
hadn't.
active, yes. So
come
the
across
right hand
it.
one is active.
Never thought of it.
So that's opposite to Australian.
Vaguely remember that.
And if you can read anything on there,
I could, I'm sure I saw an N. See, there's an N there.
well, that's the active.
Haha.
Well, assuming black is active,
Would have thought white would have
Yeah, it would, wouldn't you?
Yeah, exactly. Any other ideas? Problems? Innovations? Brilliant ideas?
Only that idea that I mentioned to you before about the mast, those NBS towers that Steve bought.
Yep.
They look like a really cool idea. You buy the business from them and it's got a little tilting stuff, so they've got a little base section and a hinging arrangement and a hydraulic jack that allows you to tilt the thing over. So instead of having to buy a tower, you can just buy this mechanism that's got the tilting arrangement.
Yep.
And you go to Nubby's or your steel merchant and buy like an 8 metre length of, I think the stuff
100
Steve
by
talked about was 89 by 89.
Yeah. That's right.
and you plonk it in this unit, lock it off, and then
It's
you've
got
got
a
an 8
carriage.
metre mast.
It's got a carriage that goes up and down
Yeah,
the
I
mast
think the
as well.
carriage is. But Steve was concerned, was keen last week, which is I think what started all this, was that he wanted to put another
Whose
3
was this?
masts up to like hold
Whose
to
meter
support
was
the
that?
ends of dipoles.
I think
Just
it came out of the.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
You should
That's
scale down those masts instead of using 89 by 89, which is obviously big enough for something quite big like an X-beam or whatever, to go to some maybe 50mm RHS and
Yeah,
make up like a carry. So then you can have a small version of it. That, well, that's to me that's the perfect arrangement for the end of a dipole or even small UHF VHF
Well,
beams.
I was thinking about getting one of those, and I sent an email off to the guy at the NBS, and I asked him, could you use aluminium, 90 by 90 aluminium? He said, yes, it'll fit in, but it'll gall as you're coming up or down.
Yeah,
Scrape.
because it's so soft it'll pick up.
I just wonder how often it would be a problem if you're experimenting and things going up and down a couple of times a week.
I've been pulling my aluminium mast up for nearly 20 years.
Is that aluminium on aluminium or aluminium on steel?
Aluminium and aluminium.
Yeah, well, this is.
I think
this
as
would
long
be-
as you
this
haven't
would
got
be
a sharp
steel and
edge.
aluminium.
Yeah, if you've got like on the inside of the RHS, if you put a nice radius, you'd be fairly unlucky to pick it up. But as soon as you've got any sort of sharp corner and it grabs, it'll just butter curl.
You mean on the carriage bit
Yeah.
that goes up and down?
Well, yeah, so the bit that goes,
Yeah.
if you don't have any sharp corners on the
Smooth,
inside, you've got a nice radius, then.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
But I would have thought you'd almost pay a small king's ransom for 90 by 90 by 6 aluminium.
Not really. I forget now. It was about $85 or something like that. And,
She'd I'd have bought a truckload of it at that price.
pretty sure it wasn't very expensive.
Was it very thick or?
I can't remember now.
90 by 90 by 4 mil.
Well, I don't know what it was. 90 by 90.
The only
by 6
hesitation I'd have in
No, no,
aluminium
the
is
thickness.
when you
I don't
lay it
know, I can't
over,
remember.
is it because you've only got that very, obviously a huge amount of mechanical advantage with the jack, is you've got a lot of bending moment where that aluminium sort of pokes out the end of the base for the whole thing to come up.
I suppose it depends what you got, what sort of beam. Well, you can drop your beam
Well, that's
right.
what, yeah, you'd have nothing.
You can
on
drop
it.
your beam right
Yeah.
down and then tilt it.
Yeah. Well, I think having the carriage is like a really good idea
It's
because
a
then
carriage that runs up the side of the
yeah, it makes it much
No,
easier
run,
because you
runs
can mount
around
antennas.
the whole tower.
Yeah, so it's like a collar with a couple of rolls
Collar,
on top
yeah.
and bottom.
Yep.
Yeah, and so
Because
the,
they have those one-man
So the
towers that have got the
antennas on
rails that
top.
run up the
Yeah.
side and all sorts of
The
cool stuff.
hazers,
It's just-
yeah.
They're just like quite a complex thing. Whereas just having a piece of oversized pipe with like a lug and a pulley
Mm.
seems pretty.
And I think
I think if you can scale it down that way, then it would be reasonably cost effective to make.
the whole thing was about $1,800 without the mast, plus I think it was about $400 freight. Because there's obviously a bit of weight. It's got to come by road and
I think it's all
Is this
galvanised too in it, which is
From
obviously.
Victoria,
yeah, NBS.
is that similar to what Herman's got?
I don't know what he's got. Could be.
No, he's got a hex beam, and it slides down or up and down,
Not sure.
and
Spreads it.
he can then tilt it over, which is interesting.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. Yeah, sounds very much like it.
I've got about a 3 metre mast here, and it's just a stub mast into a foundation, and then I've got a 3-section telescoping triangular steel mast, galvanised mast, and that sits alongside this
It's hinged at the
and
top.
tilts over, and by doing that,
You bring the top down to the ground.
yeah, you telescope down to the first section, which is about twice the length of this stub mast, and then it tilts over with a winch, and on this end to compensate for the weight of the antenna.
Out of the concrete at the bottom and the back.
No, there's a couple of large drums of water,
Oh yeah.
and when it comes down to the ground,
You've actually got to slow it down because it.
Yeah, and you just take them off. Yeah, I mean you can leave them there, but that works well. And then there's a thing called a tilt plate, and this tilt plate is it locks by gravity, so that when it's on the ground, the antenna itself would hit the ground. So you've got to reach up. You might need to just stand on something, but I can grab hold of the elements of the antenna and just give it a push and then pull it down further, and then it turns 90 degrees, so you can walk in amongst it.
Yep.
That's the real advantage of this tilt plate. It means that there's no climbing ladders. You don't have to climb a ladder. You can walk around it, and because of its shape, you can get to
points and stuff.
all parts of the antenna from the ground.
Yep.
And then when you take it back up again, you'd have to see a picture of it. It's made out of very heavy aluminium plate, and it is so constructed that it locks into place.
Yeah. I was actually giving that some thought a couple of years ago about how to put a beam on top of a mast, and when you lower it down, have it so it goes horizontal. And the way I sort of thought of doing it is if you've got a plate on top of your mast with a pivot on one end, and so the antennas are able to move up as the tower comes over, and on the other end of this plate you would have some sort of cam lock that goes around two lugs that come out of the boom, and when it's vertical you could make it so that if you had a pivot with a hook, effectively with a weight on it, the gravity pulls the hook down, pulls the weight down, and then the top comes over, the two claws come over and grab that horizontal. That was one way I thought of doing it. And then the other way, which would be a bit more complicated, would be to actually have a stainless cable running right down the centre of the tower, and when you get it all in position, you actually winch that down, so that locks it. But there's got to be, or you could maybe do it.
That's right. You have the idea of if you can have a little carriage that runs up and down, then you don't need to worry about that. You just put the antenna in its natural sort of position, and you can just lower it right down and work on the feed point, put the elements on, all the stuff, and then wind it up.
That's probably the better.
And if you're tinkering with things, like doing sort of building antennas, you can just hoik it up.
So would that work with a guide? Wouldn't work with a guide mast. Would it only work with a freestanding tower?
Yeah, because you don't have to be able to bring the carriage down.
You could weld guide points onto the little carriage, and basically if you had guide points, that when you wound it all the way up, it tensioned the guys, that would sort of hold it.
But then your winding mechanism would have to take the tension of the wind load on the tower, because the guys are going to be pulling it down, so the reaction of that downforce is going to get taken by whatever's holding it up.
Maybe just, if you're worried about wind, just wind it down when it's windy.
Yeah, that always happens the day after you get home.
Well, I say the day before. It didn't die down the last storm, it wasn't big enough.
Yeah, okay. I don't know. It's interesting, but because there's some American systems around too. Are they called phases or hazers?
Hazer, yeah.
Hazer?
That's like the tram system.
Yeah, it goes
runs
up the outside.
But the reason I was thinking about the aluminium tube is that it's a lot lighter than a 90 by 90, 8 metre long steel thing that when you tilt it
probably
over.
not going to be as rigid, but again, it doesn't really
Depends
matter.
what you're going to put on it.
Like my mast at home that I've got my satellite array on is a 6.5 metre length of 65 by 65 RHS, similar to how Winston was discussing. It's got a piece that's buried about 1.5 metres in the ground, and then it's got like 3 metres out of the ground with like a pair of bits of flat bar welded to the top of it, and then the 6.5 metre bit is beside it, and it's got 2 lugs welded out that way, so then you've just got a pin through there, under at the bottom, and it sort of hinges down. And when it gets really, really, really windy, that sort of just sways around, but it's been swaying around for 22 years and hasn't blown down yet. So
How do you get that much soil at your place?
that's clay.
Yeah, I've got clay, it's any but it's about that much, then you get rock.
You should be able to adapt
I have to go round the rocks. So just
should be able to adapt a spring-loaded gate latch mechanism and use a pull string from the ground so that you can actually tell the mast you're free and it'll tilt you over, lay over, and then when it goes back up it'll come back upright. Well, another string to pull it up back
Post like
horizontal.
a
Then
block and tackle
let-
with like
yeah.
a double thing, and you just stand there and just pull it. And when it comes in, there's a couple of little guide rails that as it comes down the bottom, sort of gravity takes over and it sort of comes in. You just grab it and just pop a bolt through the bottom, and it's all
Yeah,
good.
well, you can make it so that it's just a tilt action at the top of the tilting.
Yeah, that's what it
mast.
does. Yeah, so the bottom goes up and the top comes down.
Yeah.
And you just, because it's on the satellite array, you actually elevate the antennas to 90 degrees so that they're actually parallel with the mast. So then it'll come down. You can actually have them on a little bit of an angle so that you can bring it down and have it almost at ground level. So,
You just use a gate latch to lock it to horizontal when it's at the top.
Rex, how much extension do you have on that tower you have, or that mast thing you have by your house? Has a 2 meter antenna?
Yeah, it'll get up to 12 metres above the ground.
That's 3 sections though,
Three
right?
sections of aluminium, starting with about 60 mil by 60 mil square, and then a round, and then another round.
and that telescopes?
How do you get the last round? I mean, how does the last round extend?
Has it got a stopper so that
You
as
got
you wind it up?
on the square piece with the first round part. You've got a cable in there, right? Runs
That's
down
right.
the side.
Yes.
It runs down in a little triangle formed by the round and the corner.
Yeah.
Square stuff. How do you extend the other one?
What sort of tower is it? Is it commercial?
I've got two.
No,
It's very nicely done.
it's homemade.
Because there's a US Towers one that does something like that. And they've
I've got
like
two masts that
they've
do
got
the
voice
same
system.
sort of trick, but they're different in how they do
I'm
it.
trying
So
to.
each one has got 3 sections, and as you wind a winch at the bottom, the cable goes up, over a pulley, down to the bottom of this next one, back up again,
And that's what this
and anchors
does.
off. So that it's a 2
Yeah,
to
so
1
there's a
action
pulley at the
Those
bottom.
there,
sections are compression
but
effect.
then again,
Yeah.
it's refitted the other way, so that as it winds up, it pulls another
Yeah.
fixed line and pulls the third section up. So
So
you're
remember
winding
looking
one
at
cable
those
to
Yeah.
like
Yeah, it's
2 to 1.
round,
So it's not too
square,
hard to do,
round,
two lots
and
of
that
movement.
leaves
Yep, that leaves the gap.
So
that leaves the gap for winding it up.
So the lightest section would lift first, which would be the top section, and when it's gone to its full capacity, then the
very
next section
small
lifts.
diameter wire.
and then
No,
the-
in my
You didn't
case,
like it, did
they're
you?
all
It's only 2 mil wide.
Didn't pass the pub test.
But
Stayed there for 20 years, mate.
the lowest section down on your mast is square or round?
Round, then square, which leaves you enough room for the wire and for the pulley, and then another round one, which also leaves you enough room for the wire.
I have to think about that. I thought the base section of yours was square, as I recall, but okay.
It depends what you're defining as the base, but
Yeah, so-
the thing that's at the bottom is round.
Then there's those American ones which are either pneumatic or hydraulic.
It's interesting you speak of those. We've been doing a significant amount of research on those pneumatic ones, and we've been pricing some from a place that will telescope up to 10 metres high, and they will support 150 kilograms of weight and a sail size of 9 square metres,
Wow.
up to 140 kilometres an hour.
What are they worth?
About $6,000.
Yeah.
That's not bad.
I think that's unbelievably cheap.
And do you get
And there's keyed sections so it doesn't rotate, and it's got a locking collar at the bottom, so you can just like a little periscope, just grab it and just turn it around and lock it off.
And-
Like
And when you say $6,000, is another $6,000 for delivery to Australia?
no, it's in Victoria. It's made, they're made in
Oh,
Victoria.
okay.
Yeah, there's a
Well, it's
a
probably
huge
$6,000 to
industry
get it
of
from Tassie.
communications trailers
Yeah.
for various things, but these guys make them that start off like quite small, like 50 nominal bore with 40 and 32 that'll support 8 kilos or whatever. But then they make some that have got like 10-inch pipe at the bottom that'll go up to 40 metres. Like, he goes, what do you want? Like,
Clark used to sell them in Australia, and the ABC and by ACMA and those people used to.
Clark were the sort of one, but then there's
These
this
are-
whole
these are
spawned
the next
industry
generation.
of
Yeah.
machine shops that just make this stuff. It's all like just, and they've got like little little seal wiper so that it sort of keeps all the muck out of the seals. And
Wow.
apparently the 10 metre one, he said, with a hand pump will go up in about 30 seconds.
With a hand pump.
The hand pump. So, and they can actually run, in this particular run, they can run up to 6 Cat 5 cables up the inside. I'm not really quite sure where all the cable goes when it's detracted.
No, they must have some sort of
Like we've seen the ones with an external cable management,
with
it's like a
a,
helical coil that comes
like
down.
a hose reel type thing where
Yeah.
it just comes back and just gets wound back up at the base of something perhaps.
When you look at it, you sort of wonder, like, where's all that cable go?
Yeah. Maybe it's not connected.
But that'd be awesome for a ham. To just be able to just press the button and it'll, like just a little bicycle pump like you buy from Super Cheap for $20. Just put it on there. And I think it needs 2.5 bar of pressure. Obviously, the more flow you can have, the quicker you'll go. But
So what would be the shortest one? What would they have that you could mount on, say, your rear bumper bar and not stick too high?
they do multiple. These are the ones we looked at when they are fully retracted, are 1.8 metres high.
So they're a bit high to go on a bumper bar. You'd want one that's probably about 1.5 maybe.
I think if you rang them up and said this is what I want, they'll happily make it. But the guy was particularly helpful, like
Are they made of steel or
aluminium.
aluminium?
And just different grades and different thicknesses depending on how much you want to put up there. And they've got like guy collars that you.
And what stops it rotating?
Each section is keyed.
Okay. And how do they key it and still not have the air gap leak?
Can't answer that. Maybe. But they do, and they do make a model too that's got like a locking collar that you've actually got like a little spring-loaded bizzo that as it goes up, it runs over a groove and then sort of kicks in, like you were saying, Rob.
So it's got a mechanical locking?
Yeah, so the boat, it runs up and then it like sort of grows over a taper and the pin will just sort of drop into the hole, and then you've
How do you get it down?
Well, they have like a remote release, like a cable you've got to pull it out. So there's, if you do a search on Google, you'll find umpteen places that make them, and they're all sorts of configurations and heights. And
I've often wondered about these stage lighting
Trusses.
trusses.
Yeah.
You can get them in all different lengths from China.
Get them from CLSA and
If you didn't want to put a big beam or something on the top, that'd be a good way to get a small tower up.
Or even using them for the boom of the beam.
that stuff's really priced at
Yeah.
stuff out of Melbourne, so I think it's CLSA in Melbourne. Used to be another mob, Brownsville, who used to do something.
Yeah.
You get square section ones and
Yeah,
triangular
tri-truss
section.
and box truss.
Yeah, but some of them will go asymmetric trusses too. The bottom chord's different thicknesses to the top.
But they have a little ground support system too, where they actually have 400 box truss that sits on a little thing.
Yeah.
Then you have like a little carriage, and it's got like little machine wheels that match that, and you bolt all the truss. And that's how they build the roof structures. Basically, build it all on the ground,
And just winch it up.
and then they have like a winch at the bottom. It just runs over a thing called a cat head at the top, and the cable runs down and hooks on. And you just have 4 synchronised motors, or sometimes 8 or 12 synchronised motors, and just go, and the whole structure just goes up. It's pretty
Most of that stuff's modular, like it's about 3.5 to 4 metres long. There's all the trusses that I've seen, they're sort of designed.
comes in any lengths from sort of half a metre, 2 metres, 2.5 metre, like, and they have all different multiples, so
Yeah.
that when you add bits in, you can sort of like
It's like
add
Lego.
other components in and go, oh, I need a bit to make up that gap. So they have.
So it's Lego like. Yeah, okay.
It's pretty cool.
Cool. Any further brilliant ideas? I think we're out of brilliant ideas. I think it's coffee time. Thank you for
Brilliant
everyone who put into that. That was good. It was very good.
With those American style
Need
plates,
a way to get the sunspot
there's about
cycle
6 different
increased.
standards in the States. Like,
Yeah,
6
which
is
is
off the
like
top of my head, but there's more than one version. Like, nobody is anywhere near as standardised as Australia is. And our standards used in New Zealand
Interesting to
and
know
some of the
that
Asian countries were actually quite good.
to
But
Google
when you look at Europe and England and even parts of the same
American
country,
3P.
they've got different connections. And like there's these outlets where you plug one thing in and you'll get 220 volts. But if you use those two, pins, you
American
get
3-pin
110
plug
volts for
cover.
shaver.
Yeah.